And welcome back to room 303 in Freshman English. And we now turn to the great William Shakespeare and the 7 Ages of Man. I'm with you on 731. Let's read the biography information quickly. Note your dates, 1564 to 1616. And let's read. Shakespeare forged a perfect blend of high drama and exalted language. He wrote more than 36 plays, and because of the timelessness of his themes and the beauty of his language, lines from his plays are quoted more often than those of any other writer. The 7 Ages of Man actually comes from the play As You Like It, considered one of his best monologues. Now we're going to see Shakespeare throughout our high school experience. So let's put this in our notes. In our freshman year, we study poems by him, and we look at the great play Romeo and Juliet. In our sophomore year, we study his great play Julius Caesar. We don't spend any time with Shakespeare in our curriculum in the junior year because we're studying American authors, but we come back in the senior year to spend time with his tragedies, Macbeth and Hamlet. Somewhere along the way, you're sometimes introduced as well to his classic comedies. As You Like It is, of course, one of those. But we'll also sometimes see Much Ado About Nothing, Midsummer Night's Dream, and if you study at the honors level in your senior year, we study as well plays like Othello, another tragedy, as well as Henry V. So we study a broad range of Shakespeare in our high school curriculum, and that is not unusual, and here's why. Shakespeare did 2 things really important. Write this down. Now, when I study with you again in your senior year, I'll come back to these ideas. And I'll even say it again when we study Romeo and Juliet together. But let's say it now. Shakespeare did 2 things which, in my estimation, makes him the greatest writer of all time. 1, he asks, you're going to see this even in this little monologue passage here, he asks some of the most profound questions in the history of thought. No question. He asks amazing questions, difficult questions, as you're going to see even in this text, right? And then number 2, sometimes, and I would underline that word, circle that word, box that word, sometimes he answers those questions. He doesn't always answer those questions. Like the great teacher Socrates, he loves to ask a question that he might not always give an answer to. Or, are you ready for this? He'll give multiple answers which are sometimes conflictive. Sometimes he will give you an answer that seems pretty affirmative, and then other times in another text, he'll give you the complete opposite answer, which makes him then not just human, but amazingly human, and he speaks to the human condition. Speaking of the human condition, let's turn now to page 735, this little monologue. It comes in the middle of a play, but you don't have to know anything about the play As You Like It to be able to play the game, no pun intended, of this text. Now I'm going to challenge you in this text to read along and to pay attention to the following. Jot this down. In this speech, your life is compared to a series of stages that you go through. That's why it's called the 7 Ages of Man. There are 7 of them. So go ahead right now at level 1 and write down the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Skip a line in between each one so that when you're finished at level 1, you can answer this question. What are the stages that someone goes through? Number 2. This is a text written roughly 1600. That's a year or 2 ago. So I'm going to ask you this question. Do you think it's still the case today that everybody goes through 7 different stages in their life? Do you think that's true or not? Now, something that I always find fascinating about teaching this text, I'll give you a heads up right away for freshmen, is that many freshmen don't think of their life yet in necessarily stages, although they've been talking that way for a long time. When I grow up, I'm going to be a... What do you mean when you grow up? What do you mean be a? What does that mean? Why don't you say when I grow up I'm going to be a human? No, I'm already a human. Oh, so you kind of see your life as a series of stages. First I go to this school, then I go to this school, then I do this, then I do... In other words, you understand your life is lived out in phases or stages. Are those identifiable? And does everyone go through those kinds of stages? Let's look at the famous 7 ages or stages of man. And by the way, the word man here is used as a male. We can debate whether it's the same for a female as well, all right?
The 7 Ages of Man by William Shakespeare. All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts, his acts being 7 ages. At first, the infant, mewling and puking in the nurse's arms, and then the whining schoolboy, with his satchel and shining morning face, creeping like snail unwillingly to school. And then the lover, sighing like furnace, with a woeful ballad made to his mistress' eyebrow. Then a soldier, full of strange oaths, and bearded like the pard, jealous in honor, sudden and quick in quarrel, seeking the bubble reputation, even in the cannon's mouth. And then the justice, in fair round belly with good capon lined, with eyes severe, and beard of formal cut, full of wise saws and modern instances. And so he plays his part. The 6th age shifts into the lean and slippered pantaloon, with spectacles on nose and pouch on side, his youthful hose well saved, a world too wide for his shrunk shank, and his big manly voice turning again toward childish treble, pipes and whistles in his sound. Last scene of all, that ends this strange, eventful history, is second childishness and mere oblivion. Sans teeth, sans eyes, sans taste, sans everything.
All right, so if this is one of your first introductions to the plays of Shakespeare, welcome. And notice that in the middle of the play, we have a little monologue that, note the irony. You have an actor standing on stage saying to another actor, opening lines, all the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. So right away, let's go ahead and jot this one down. This is an amazing idea. Watch this. We decide to go, watch this. We decide to go to a play. We watch, for example, a performance of a play. All right? What happens? Well, a character walks out on stage and starts speaking words. Yes? Question. Who taught him those words? No. It's in a script. It's this thing called a script. You got a script and you memorize the words. And when you come out on stage, there are certain words that you have to have memorized and you have to say them out loud. That's called a play. Question. If the world is a stage that you live on and you are a player, does that mean that everything you're doing is scripted? The fact that you're sitting here right now, dude, I have total choice. I could right now get up and walk out of 303 if I wanted to. How do you know that's not in the script? Wait. So you're telling me that right now the thoughts that I'm thinking might be scripted? Look at the lines again. The world's a stage. You're just a player on the stage, which is a fascinating idea, right? Notice he says it. We all have our entrances, our exits and our entrances, right? One man in his time plays many parts, his acts being 7 ages. So in other words, right away, let's put it in our notes. We play different roles. Now, the ancient Greeks invented this notion that you go and you sit and you look at a play and the actors put on masks. Those masks were called personae. It's where we get our word person from, which is a very interesting question. Watch this. And even write it in your notes. Question, who are you? Who are you? Well, what do you mean, who am I? And you start giving your name, or you start... The question now is, what if there's more than one you? What if, for example, there's a series of yous? Now, these parts that are played are fascinating as we go through them. Let's just work through them now. You already got them at level 1. Let's play the game. Number one, well, obviously you're an infant. Before anything else, you had to be born. Of course, as we've said before in 303, you didn't choose the two people who decided to produce you. You didn't choose anything about that, or so we assume, right? And you're an infant. Notice that you're puking in the nurse's arms. Then you're a schoolboy. Notice the adjectives. Whining schoolboy with your books, unwilling to go to school. By the way, make a note here at 3a. We're going to hear more about boys not wanting to go to school in Romeo and Juliet, and the ways in which boys, back in Shakespeare's day, it was only boys. We would say today, all school kids. Notice how it's different going to school versus coming out of school, right? Watch kids at Worland High School, and they're always kind of slomping in the morning. Oh, watch how they leave the school in the afternoon. Pew! Gone. Run, run. Right? Hurry. Right? This is the point here that he makes. The second thing is you gotta go to school. You gotta learn some stuff. The third stage is falling in love, right? Being the lover, sighing like a furnace. We're going to hear about this when we study our opening scenes of Romeo when we meet him for the first time. Fourth, you're a soldier, right? Now, it's interesting that it's at this point, number 4, that some students will say, now things shift a little bit, and it's not the same for everybody, because not everybody is a soldier. But I would recommend that we go back to the lines from Longfellow's Psalm of Life. In this world's broad field of battle, in the bivouac of life, be not like dumb-driven cattle, be a hero in the strife. What if you think of life as a battle? Right? And at that point, then all of a sudden, we're all soldiers of a kind. Here, of course, for Shakespeare, soldier means you go out and you make your fortune, right, through battle. And more particularly, notice the bubble reputation. That's a fun one. Do you remember when you were children and you did that thing where you you blew into that thing and the bubble went up, right? And then all you had to do was touch it and it went away, right? He says that's the reputation that you sometimes will get as a soldier. So you get it, but you will lose it really, really quickly. It can go away just as fast. Or, for example, running into the cannon's mouth. For us, we might say what today? After you become a student, then you become a student. Right? In other words, you got to go to college after you're finished with high school. And why do you go to college? So you can get a job. Now, the number 5 position in the stage is that, the judge. This kind of is symptomatic, if you will, of the job, right? So in other words, you go to that phase of your life where you're a worker, okay? And you got to punch the clock every day or do whatever it is you do. As we sometimes said in 303, to freshmen, you are here for 4 years to get ready for 40 years. I mean, think about that line. You're here for 4 years to get ready for 40 years. What do you mean 40 years? Well, 40 years of work. You got to go to work, right? And you got to do something. That's that whole thing of what am I going to be when I grow up. And then there's the 6th stage. Did you notice it? The 6th age shifts into the lean and slippered pantaloon. In other words, old age starts to come on. This is what we would call retirement. This is that moment when they say to you, thanks for coming out, you did your job, appreciate the however many years it was, and now it's time for you to go bye-bye, and somebody younger gets to take your place and do your job for you, right? That's the 6th stage. The 7th stage is the last stage, and it's the last scene, he calls it. It ends the strange, eventful history, is second, childishness. Now, 2 lines above at line 24, turning again towards childish trouble. Let's put this in our notes. Shakespeare points out, it's a funny thing, don't mean to gross any of you out, but watch this. It's a funny thing. You're born and somebody has to change your diapers. You live long enough, somebody's got to change your diapers. Right? If you've spent any time around a really, really old person, what is it about them? They increasingly become more childlike. They have to be helped more. And if you stay alive long enough, often you really do have to be helped in the same way that you had to be helped when you were an infant. By the way, notice everything's missing. Sans means without, right? Without teeth, without eyes, without taste, without everything. All right, let's jump to 2a really quickly and make some quick observations. Shakespeare says, our life is a gradual evolution from infancy to infancy. That is to say, your life is kind of like a circle, where you go from being a child to being a child, right? In the middle, you got to go through all this stuff that you got to do to make your life somehow your life. Number two, Shakespeare seems to suggest that everybody has a part to play. That is to say, your life is kind of scripted. And what it is that you're going to do in your life seems to almost be scripted in some way. Finally, number three, to a message's themes. This idea that we play different roles in our life. We have different kinds of personae. I once had a freshman who said, I totally understand this. When I'm hanging with my people at night, I'm one kind of person. When I'm talking to the principal at school, I'm a different kind of person. Oh, so you're fake? Well, no, it's not like that. It's called, you play different roles. I mean, when we were young, we watched this, for example, with our parents. Can you remember, a 3B question, can you remember the first time you watched your mom or your dad act differently because they were around somebody that, they met? For example, maybe an old college friend, right? And all of a sudden, the actions were, and you're like, who is this person? I don't even know who this person is. That is to say, we play parts. Let's jump to B really quickly, the rhetorical stuff, and let's just pay attention to two things. Notice the symbolism of the stage, that is to say, the world, right? Sir Walter Raleigh said it this way, a contemporary of Shakespeare. He asked it this way, what is our life? And that's the name of the poem. What is our life? And he says, a play of passion, our mirth, the music of division. Our mother's wombs, the tiring houses be, the dressing room, where we are dressed for this short comedy. In other words, it's like when you were in your mama's tummy, it's like being in the dressing room before you go out onto the stage, right? Later, when you're a senior, we'll study Shakespeare's classic play, Macbeth. And Macbeth, at the end of his life, will say that our life is like a tired player who struts and frets his hour upon the stage and then is heard no more. It's a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. That is to say, the idea of the very last word of this, nothing, everything's gone. By the end of your life, everything is gone. It's kind of depressing, right? So for example, here you are young and strong and dynamic and full of hope and full of all this stuff that's coming and it's all going to be great, and I wonder what you'll look like when you're 85. By the way, you can do that software now, they tell me, where they'll age you. Dude, if you haven't done this, I don't know if you want to or not, but they'll take a photograph of you and then they'll age you and they'll show you what you're going to look like when you're 80. Some of my freshmen are like, dude, I definitely do not need to see that. I mean, I'm depressed enough as it is being a freshman, and now all of a sudden it's like, what am I going to look like when I get really old? Well, we know what you're not going to have. You're not going to have those things, right? Teeth, eyes, taste, much else either. Whoops. Well, let's talk level 3A really quickly. What for you is the text that teaches you best that your life is a series of stages that you go through? And each one of those stages is really an important stage. Of course, we're playing a game here that's a very old game, so let's put this at 3A as well. It is the game, for example, of Homer's Odyssey. We'll study it together later, it's why I'm bringing it up. Where Odysseus goes through a series of adventures. Think of your life as a series of adventures. And you go through one, and then you go through another one. Can I say this out loud? Your first day as a student at Worland High School was an Odyssean-like adventure. It was exciting, it was scary, it was challenging, it was all of those things. But one thing we can say absolutely about it, that scene in your play is now gone. And you'll never do it again. You'll never have that scene again. Let's jump to 3B. To what degree do you think of your life as a series of stages? You could argue that you've already hit stage 1 and lived through it, infancy. You could argue that you're already kind of halfway through the second stage of being a student. Of course, the third stage is falling in love. Some students say, that will happen for me in high school. Other students say, that will definitely not happen for me in high school. I'm way too young to fall in love. Shakespeare will say, it's not so easy. Right? Our opening lines of Romeo and Juliet. right, opens with the idea that a pair of star-crossed lovers take their life. Star-crossed. In other words, Romeo didn't go to the party expecting to see Juliet. He went to the party expecting to see another girl. He sees Juliet, wham. 24 hours later, they're married. Wham. 24 hours after that, they're dead. Wham. In other words, you can't always predict, but what are your thoughts about the stages of your life? Okay, I'll ask this question this way. What are you going to be when you grow up? There it is. What are you going to be when you grow up? Okay? What will be for you the way you will define yourself economically, professionally, and how are you going to get there? And does anything that's happening right now in school help you at all to get there? Well, there you go. Shakespeare's classic, The Seven Ages. Hey, I hope that maybe it kind of excites you to maybe want to pick up the play as you like it and read the rest of the play. It's wonderful. Thank you.